listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plimer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning into the podcast again. Firstly, I just want to say that I really appreciate everyone's kind words, tweets, emails and reviews, so please keep them coming. I read and reply to every one of them and I love getting that feedback for the show, so thank you so much. Secondly, I just want to give all listeners a bit of a heads up regarding a change that's coming to the show. Every year that I run the pod, I have to pay a significant amount of money for hosting, bandwidth, storage, the website, etc. As the podcast popularity goes up, so do the costs due to the number of downloads. As such, to ensure that the podcast is always available free to loyal and new listeners, I'm going to be moving to a sponsorship model pretty soon. This will basically involve ad reads at the beginning or end of each episode and is pretty common practice in the podcasting world. Other than that, nothing else will change and every episode will always be available via the same method in which you downloaded this one. So, if you own a business and are looking to promote it effectively using a podcast, please reach out to me either via Twitter or through the contact section of the show's webpage, both of which I'll add to the show notes of this episode. The Rugby Coaches Corner podcast can also offer a precise demographic for your product. So, if you feel advertising via a podcast is for you and your business, please get in touch with me to discuss. For now, though, sit back and enjoy this episode with Stuart Lancaster. I've been really excited about this one for a while now, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it. And just another heads up too, I completely butchered the intro here for Stuart in this episode, and want to say special thanks to him for being so patient with me on this one. See if you can spot my numerous errors. Okay, welcome to episode number 74 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plimer, and joining me today is Stuart Lancaster. Stuart is a former school teacher and is now senior coach at Leinster in the Pro 14. From Yorkshire originally, he headed up England between 2008 and 2011 and has had many coaching roles, including those with Leeds and the RFU as elite rugby director. It's a pleasure to have him on the show, so welcome, Stuart.
No, thank you, Andrew. Just a slight correction.
Yeah.
So I joined the RFU in 2007 and did the head of elite player development role and the Saxons coach until 2011.
Right,
and then I was the head coach 2011 to 2015.
Right, okay. Do you want me to redo that?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure your listeners won't mind.
Yeah. Sweet. Cool. Okay, well, touching on that then, when did you actually first start coaching and what was that experience like?
So I guess I was a teacher first of all. So I did a sports science degree when I was left school.
Yeah.
And then did that for 3 years. And then I did a PGCE, a teacher training degree, when I was 21.
Okay.
And this is in the early 90s. And then that led me into teaching, to be honest. I taught PE at a school in Wakefield, West Yorkshire in England, and did that between the ages of 21 and 30. So between 91 to 2000, and obviously the game of rugby went professional in 95, and I was playing at the time, so I got paid to play a little bit. I took a sabbatical from teaching and went full-time for a year, which ironically was actually not a particularly enjoyable time. I much preferred being busy all the time and being a teacher. And then I got injured that year as well, so I went back to school. The sabbatical ended, but at that time I got offered the academy manager's job at the club I was playing at, Leeds, and it sort of all grew from there really. So I was 30 when I started, but I'd done my level 2 and level 3 before then. Right. I think I did my level 3 coaching award when I was 28. So I was on being a teacher, I was on the pathway to coaching, and obviously becoming the academy manager meant I went into a full-time coaching role, albeit there was part of leadership and management in building and setting up an academy as well.
Right. Okay. Being a teacher myself, I've got a natural favoritism to coaches who are teachers. Also, what do you feel are the big advantages for those who have come from the teaching profession and also coach at the same time?
I think there's huge advantages. If I'm being honest, I think going right back to the start, I was very lucky in that I was taught the fundamentals of teaching. which essentially is coaching, really. The ability to communicate, to inspire, to motivate, to come up with session content, to plan a session, do a session, review the session. So I was taught by some very good teacher trainers. And when you do teacher training, you get videoed a lot, with microphones on, and you begin to pick up verbal tics that you might have, or positioning things that you get wrong, or how you can learn to discipline a group or motivate a group or communicate to a group. So there's lots of little tips you get taught as a teacher on teacher training. And then you spend 8 to 9 years doing it, lots. So, a typical day, you plan your badminton session, you teach badminton, 50 minutes later, that lesson finishes. Then you've got basketball, then you've got football, then you've got badminton again, and then you've got rugby, and that's Monday. Yeah. So you do it five times a day, 5 days a week, really. And it's that plan your session. Okay, that didn't go that well. That drill worked well. I didn't handle that situation that effectively. I'll probably do this next time. That's going to be my follow-up. And you're just doing it all the time. You're doing it 5 times a day, 5 days a week, 35 weeks of the year. So just the volume of coaching and teaching that you do without doubt prepares you, and you learn by making mistakes, as many, and the mistakes, they're not terminal, if you're teaching a year 7 badminton class and the overhead thing goes as well as you want. Yeah. So it's a relatively safe ground to develop your skills. So then when you go into coaching, the art of communication and the basics of coaching you've already got inside you, as opposed to, say, a player who goes into coaching who's maybe played at the highest level. That's the bit they don't have. They've obviously got the technical content, but it's the other bits and pieces of coaching that actually I think is the difference anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I had Andy Friend on a couple of episodes ago, and he referred to it as having time in the saddle. And I couldn't agree more. You're in an environment that's not really high pressure, and you get to make a lot of mistakes and correct those. Yeah, for sure. Cool. Okay. So jumping forward now, your England experience has been pretty well publicised, and I don't want to dig too deep in that, because Finding Mastery, the podcast you did on that, was fantastic, and you go through that really well. So I'll put that in the show notes. What I am curious about is the big lessons from that England experience. How did that transfer into the success you're having at Leinster? What were some of the rocks that you think have had an effect on a really successful time at Leinster?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the time with England was pretty full on. It was after 2011 World Cup, and Martin Johnson resigned, and I took over. And at the time in the RFU, there was no CEO, there was no chairman. Dysfunctional board, commercial partners are walking away, no trust between club and country, really. So the England job, whilst my title was head coach, it was a very broad job, and a lot of things needed working on during that period. And so I learned a huge amount. Obviously, when you're playing against the best teams in the world as well, you're playing against New Zealand, were fantastic around that time. South Africa, very strong. Australia were very strong, even the home nations, whilst we managed to do well in the Six Nations, there was still that tribal rivalry that would bring the best out of Wales or Scotland or France, whoever. So, it was a great, steep learning experience as a coach. But also I probably did less hands-on coaching than I've done at any other time in my career because of nature of the job. It meant there was a lot more leadership and managerial stuff that needed doing, as well as the coaching. And obviously, being an international coach does mean you've got less time on the saddle, as we've just described. There's less games, there's less sessions. But I learned a huge amount. And one thing for certain, after the World Cup finished in 2015, I made myself a promise, having spent all my career, in a tracksuit coaching, that I was going to spend more time doing that again. Yeah. And I was just very lucky that when Leinster, the opportunity came up, it wasn't for the number one position that Leo had. It was for actually a head coach they were looking for. So it allowed me to park the experience I had in terms of leadership management, not forget about it and not, never use it, but get the balance more back into the coaching side of, what I've developed. So I think, obviously, as a coach, I think I've been able to obviously coach England 50 times, bring experience to Leinster. I think that's been one thing. I think I'm coaching both sides of the ball, so attack and defence, which is quite unique. So that's been beneficial for me. I've been able to sort of support and challenge Leo, with leadership and management stuff that I'd learned along the way, and try and help develop leadership within the playing group. So yeah, it's a huge amount I've taken into Leinster, but there was already a very strong IP in Leinster anyway. They'd been by Joe Schmidt, Michael Checker. They'd won the European Cup 3 times. There's a group of players who are all in the Ireland squad now. Johnny Sextons and Rob Carneys and Sean O'Brien's and Jamie Heaslip's of this world. There were lots of Lions in their squad, and so I probably learned as much as I gave as well, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So it's been a really good fit. The first year we lost in 2 semi-finals, the European Cup semi-final and the Pro 14.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second year, we did the double. We won the European Cup and then the Pro 14. And then this year, obviously, just lost against Saracens, but then beat Glasgow in the Pro 14 final. So, yeah, we've had good success. And we're just getting going into pre-season now, actually, funnily enough. It's second day of pre-season.
Crazy.
We've got about 18 lads in the Ireland camps. So they're not here. So we've got a really young group at the moment that we're developing. It's back to basics. So it's great for me today to actually just be out there going through the basics of catch, pass, running lines, decision making, etc. with a younger group.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and one of the things I remember when you were announced with Leinster, one of the things you were saying was you wanted the players to be comfortable in chaos. I love that term, and I think that's describes rugby pretty accurately. What do you mean by that, and what would that look like in a practice session where you're trying to make them get comfortable in chaos?
Well, I just feel that there's a lot of coaching that takes place that's very structured and very starter play orientated.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of time gets invested into what's our 3-phase sequence that's going to result in a try, and when you actually break the game down, that actually forms only a very small portion of 80 minutes. And I just felt at Leinster we needed to be better at the unstructured part of the game. So my start point was really about keeping the ball alive, trying to avoid rucks where possible, playing an offloading game, having a face play structure that allowed us to create challenges to the defence, but not so rigid that we couldn't flex within it. So it wasn't actually the point I started with. The point I started with, when I started, it was September 2016. It was defence I started with because I felt we needed to get that bit right before we could build on the attack. So, but when the attack piece really began to take shape, and I think we scored the most tries in Europe over the last 3 years. We scored 99 tries this season. I think we scored 80 last season. So, we've definitely found different ways to challenge defences, and a lot of it's to do with that sense of being comfortable in chaos. So the ability to have a basic structure that the players can use, but use at high speed, where decision making has been decision making time has been restricted, fatigue's been set in, and it's almost that unconscious competence. So we know our flow. We know what's going to happen when, and the players can read each other's cues. And we do a lot of work. A lot of training sessions, if you were to watch, would be a lot of 12 on 12, 15 on 15, 10 on 10. Lots of changes of attack and defence. Lots of lift touch games. Lots of retreat touch games. Lots of offload touch games. All getting more and more challenging as the players get more and more used to the phase play system that we're implementing.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I've noticed as a fan watching from afar is the last 3 years the development of the offloading game that Leinster's brought. It's been great to watch and is definitely pretty potent when it's on.
Yeah, we played. I remember I played when I first started playing the senior rugby. I went to a club called Wakefield Rugby Union, who were a fantastic attacking team at that time, and I went there for 3 years. It's only now when I look back and I think about why that was. Obviously, there was good players there, but they played this game called Morley Touch, and basically it was touch and pass game. And if you were touched by one person, you could carry on running. And on the second touch, you had to play the ball, and away you went. If you got touched by one person and you were approaching the try line, you weren't allowed to score the try. You had to pass to someone else. But essentially, what it promoted was pushing on the play and keeping the ball alive, and not setting up the next phase. So you're constantly looking for second and third touches. And we played Morley touch all the time.
Yeah.
When I think about it. And, I play hybrids of that type of game all the time as well. And I think a lot of my philosophy been shaped by that time in my career.
Yeah.
No, and the other thing that would have shaped it would have been, there's a coach, Brian Ashton, who I'm sure you've heard of, Coach Dickens. And he was a big influence on me during my time as academy manager. We got great development as academy managers. We'd go on coaching courses and we'd all sit down with each other. And Brian was running the academy at the time, Junior National Academy in England. And he would come and stimulate and challenge us to be more creative as coaches. And I do think that period as well. And I was coaching the academy at the time. So this was, between the ages of 30 and 35, again, where games, the results mattered, but they didn't win you a trophy, or, you weren't going to get sacked if you lost. And you could experiment a lot with talented 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So I think all that sort of helped shape my philosophy, which ultimately has resulted in bringing that through to Leinster, where there is a very talented group of players who can deliver it.
Yeah, no doubt. Cool. You touched on the loss against Saracens in the Heineken Cup final. What were some of the main lessons that you took away from that as a coach, and how did you try to correct them in a fairly short turnaround for the Pro 14 final?
It was a short turnaround. I mean, we lost on the Saturday, and then we had Munster the following Saturday in the semi-final. So it wasn't just a matter of getting to Glasgow; it's a matter of beating our closest rivals at the RDS. So so obviously the first thing you've got to deal with on any defeat as a coach is work out in your own mind what went wrong and what the solutions are to that problem, because the players are still dealing with the defeat. They're dealing with their own individual performance within that, and all the friends and family and all that sort of stuff's going on in the mind on the Sunday. So my job as a coach, I think, is to explain the defeat and try and give them solutions to why we didn't win, and then turn that around in a short space of time into a positive, so that we can move on and take the learn without dragging it around with us, and then go on to prepare to play Munster and then play Glasgow, which obviously ultimately we won both. So, the big thing obviously for me in the Saracens was two things really. One was I felt that with a 10-0 head start, we put ourselves in a good position and we gave them access back in the game, which I think we could have controlled a little bit better. The second was three areas actually. Second area was I don't think we created the game of movement enough. When you're playing against a team like Saracens, who are so strong defensively, if you play the game between the two 15-metre lines, then it becomes very easy for their big fellas to come off a line and whacking you behind the gain line. You need to create a game of movement by taking the ball outside of those two channels. And I don't think we had opportunity to do that, and we talked about doing it, but I don't think we actually delivered that as well as we could have done. And then within that, there's also a third area of taking on the line and seeing space. Some teams are very, very good at taking the line on, but often, they miss opportunities on the edges. And I think we were playing, particularly start of the second half, playing well. It was 10-all at half time. Obviously, the game management piece, we could have ended the game 10-3 up. We could have perhaps called a different start to play when they had Marijo in the bin. But the start of the second half, we started well and we had opportunities. We had a 5-on-2 that we didn't take. We took the line on when the space was on the edge. And there was almost in the same sequence, actually, another opportunity in the same vicinity that we didn't take. And I think they're the big moments that you have to take in the big game. Allowed Saracens belief and access back in the game, and obviously once they got a lead, that close to the game finishing, it was always going to be very difficult to claw that back. And one or two refereeing decisions that we didn't agree with that cost us, but that often happens in big games, unfortunately. I've know from bitter experience, you can have all the plans and all the right intentions, but sometimes you don't always get that subjective decision that you need.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting with the Rugby World Cup with the new tackle laws that have been pretty heavily officiated in the under-20s. Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the under-20s? You sit there thinking, geez, I mean, the games must be lasting. The games must be lasting like I don't know how long, because there's so many stoppages in time now, and obviously yellow cards and red cards very prevalent. So it's be interesting to see if they referee with the same level of, I'm not sure actually is the right word, the same level of detail that they're currently doing in the 20s, because if a player drops his hips and he's caught the ball and someone ends up slightly higher than they ordinarily would have done, then you're looking at a yellow if not a red.
Yeah, no, I think of it like, guys from our generation playing, we wouldn't be on the field. We wouldn't have been able to stay on the field.
I watched the under-20 game at the weekend, then I watched the State of Origin. And I thought,
exactly.
My God, every tackle in that game would have been a yellow card or red card.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a challenge, and I just hope that it's not going to have a major impact in the outcome of some pretty important games coming up.
Yeah, I suspect there will be some.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, once you were in the Pro 14 final, what was the kind of the mindset going into that week leading up to the final against Glasgow, and how did you what strategies did you employ there, probably more psychologically to push past the Heineken Cup disappointment and be open and positive about the exciting challenge of a Pro 14 final?
Well, yeah, I think psychologically we'd overcome Saracens' defeat by beating Munster. So that was the big challenge was that week. When you're in a final, you're pretty disappointed as a coach, having worked so hard all year that you've got to psychologically try and get the players in the right place. So there was no psychological challenge really. We were excited about going up to try and win the title away from home. Leinster have won the Pro 14 5 times, but all in Dublin. So we wanted that challenge. We wanted it. Glasgow, obviously, in the home city, there was 40,000. The challenge was, Dave Rennie's a highly qualified and very good coach, and his team, probably the second highest try scorers behind us. So the big challenge was dealing with their attack, to be honest, because of the quality and the way in which they construct their attack, their variety of ways in which they exit from their own half. They do a lot of sweep plays where they've got Stuart Hall back on the inside. So Stuart Hall and Adam Hastings were very, very good together. Very, very combative pack and tough. He talks about brutality, I think is one of his phrases. And, they're a very competitive team to play against. So the big thing for me leading into the game was actually defence, because I believed if we got our defence right, we could create problems in our attack. Now, unfortunately for the occasion, it was raining on the day. So that had a bearing on how much rugby either team could play. But we got our noses in front. I think on a wet day like that, that was probably the difference. And but the most pleasing thing really was our defence. If I'm being honest, that was the bit where we'd done a whole lot of work on shutting them down, and we got a charge down try as well, which was rewarding. We'd scouted that. And
that was the first one.
Yeah. So there was lots of little things, and in a game, you can always look back in a game and think we could have done this better, could have done that better. But I've never coached in a game that's perfect anyway. So we did enough to win, and I thought on the day we deserved it, not by much, and it was a great way to finish the season.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, onto some stuff you're doing outside of Leinster. You're producing some excellent content for coaches and leaders in general on the topic of leadership. I've been going through a bunch of them on your LinkedIn page, and they're extremely valuable for me, but not for coaches in general. What's the general goal there for putting out that material from your end?
It was interesting. It actually started with a mate of mine who he'd set up a company, and he'd created this platform for someone to put content on and create their own little website, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
So when I arrived at Leinster, I was living away from home, lots of evenings where you're on your own, wife and kids are in Leeds. So I thought, well, I might as well go down this route of trying to create some content and share the content. So anyway, so I did that. So I created a leadership club and I created a coaching club. And it's quite hard to create an online leadership content, I've come to the conclusion, because it's easy when it's not easy, but if you have to do a leadership talk to a group of coaches, you're actually there with them. You can show the slides, you can talk about experiences and this and that. But when you're doing it to a virtual audience, I wasn't really sure how to do it. So anyway, so what I decided to do was I created 5 or 6 modules, of which had 5 or 6 presentations in each, which lasts about 10 minutes in total. And I would basically talk over the top of them. And I found a way to sort of capture me talking over the top of a PowerPoint. So it's pretty rough and ready, to be honest, but it worked. So I managed to get the content. The coaching club was a lot more challenging because I didn't realize, but you can't obviously just take footage and put it online because it's copyrighted of, X competition or Y competition. So there was stuff I had of me coaching. But I mean, bear in mind, this is my, I've got a full-time job, you know what I mean? So I didn't have time to go and get loads of videos of me coaching different school teams and, different ideas. So that was a real challenge, the coaching club one. So I left that. And anyway, the leadership club, what I soon realized as well was in order to sort of get these things off the ground, you need a website. So you've got to pay for a website. That takes some time. And then it's all on the website and the content of the website. But then you sat there thinking, well, no one knows it's there. So then you've got to market it. So to market it, you need to be on, you probably know this better than me. You need
exactly.
to be on social media, you need to be on Facebook and LinkedIn and, Twitter and all this sort of stuff. And I wasn't interested in being on those forums, and also I was rubbish at marketing. It was my own stuff. So
my wife's a marketer, so she helps me out.
Oh, well, there you go. Maybe I have to speak to her because so I ended up shelving all the content. Anyway, after about a year, I thought, I've still got this content. Perhaps I should just share it anyway, and rather than try and monetize it, put it out on LinkedIn for free. So that's what I did. So basically, I put the content on LinkedIn, and I put one on a week, and I'm up to the last week now. Actually, is next week. So that's the last one. So that's been one a week since January.
Awesome.
But while I was doing it, a guy contacted me and said, "Why don't you put it on Udemy?" So Udemy, udemy.com. It's a bit like what I've just described. It's a portal where people put online content. And if you want to learn how to, I don't know, do salsa dancing, you go on Udemy and Google and type in salsa dancing, and it comes up with loads of people who will teach you salsa dancing. And you basically pay to access that online content. Now, the way it works on Udemy is that you put your price, what your content is going to cost, and they invariably, obviously, discount it in order to entice people to buy, and they get a share of it. So I put all my content on there. So it's all on there at the moment, actually. So if you play your cards right and you go on udemy.com and Google it, you should be able to get it for $10.99, awesome. The whole of it. So it's only a tenner, really.
Yeah.
If you get your timing wrong, you can pay $149. But now I'm giving the game away. I don't think anyone will do that.
All right.
So it's all on Udemy, and then it's on LinkedIn also, obviously. But it's been interesting, the Udemy one, because as you put on leadership content, then if you Google leadership on Udemy, my course is ranked 91st or something, and like miles behind the first one. But the more that people go on the course, the more people do reviews, the more it sort of rises up the rankings. It's a bit like Google.
Yeah.
So it's gradually begun to rise up, and people have bought it. And then what's been fascinating is on a daily basis, someone from India signed up today, someone from New Zealand yesterday, someone from South Africa the day before, Australia, some former players have signed up. I've noticed them, and I can I'm there to sort of help them with messaging or connection, ideas if they come back with the other stuff. So that's been really good. I've really enjoyed that, actually, that sort of just watching it grow across the world. It's not grown massively, to be honest, but it's still grown. It's nice to see that people are accessing and learning from what I've learned.
Yeah.
And then, so I think what I'll do is I'm going to go down that route, and then I'm going to do a second series, if you like, of further things that I've learned since then. And I do think that coaching club has merit as well. I obviously know you're speaking to rugby coaches on your podcast. Something I would, I always search out, any content that I can access to help me become a better coach.
Yeah.
But I definitely, hopefully the leadership stuff, you've said it's of interest. A lot of people give me positive feedback, so it's there if people are interested.
Yeah, it's great. And I'll put the Udemy link in the show notes so people can dig that up. And I'll definitely get stuck into that as well. All right, Stuart, we always end the show with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up in Leeds, who was one of the favourite players that you looked up to?
Peter Winterbottom.
Okay,
so
yeah.
The open side for England. So I was an open side, and he was a headingley player, and he was playing for England at the time. And he would be, Jean-Pierre Reeves as well. I like Jean-Pierre Reeves, another blonde open side. So they were
covered in blood.
Yeah, exactly. They were my two.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Both they've been mentioned before from former guests as well, both of those, so that's cool. Again, what about now? Question 2, who are some of the players that you start getting excited about when you see them with the ball in hand or about to make a tackle?
Well, there's loads. Jeez. I love Bowden Barrett. Yep. I'd love to coach him, and I think he's a fantastic player. Obviously, I'm very lucky to have coached Stone Farrell and Johnny Sexton, both of whom I would put in the top bracket of players I've coached. Some of the really exciting players at Leinster at the moment, Gary Ringrose, Robbie Henshaw, James Ryan, they're outstanding. Jordan Lama, outstanding young player. So some brilliant, but there's some equally, when I go back through the players I capped with England, whether it be Billy Vunipola or Jonathan Joseph or Anthony Watson or Jack Noel, very lucky to have coached many great players and coached against them. Who else? You just love to coach. I'd love to coach in New Zealand, or certainly in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia as well, included, because you look at them and you just think, you could, you just love to have the opportunity to coach players of that quality. I look at the Crusaders when I watch them play. And you'd love to have a game against them as well, a Leinster versus Crusaders would be the dream.
Yeah, make it happen. It'd be great.
Just gotta sort out the global season.
Yeah. Okay, and third question: what about coaches, high-profile coaches that you look up to and respect what they're doing?
Well, I'd say Brian Ashton, obviously, when I was a young coach. I think he obviously had a big influence on my career. Wayne Smith, very fortunate to build a relationship with him. And, I remember one time I was in New Zealand and I stayed at his house and we went for a walk and we got talking about the game and, his knowledge and experience, not just of the game, but also culture and identity. And so he'd be right up there, definitely. But again, you go through the, when you're an England coach or certainly in Leinster now, the coaches that you've coached against, high regard for all of them. It's not an easy profession to be in. And the beauty of rugby is that there's so many different ways to win the game. And, Dave Rennie does it brilliantly. Wayne Pivac did a great job at Scarlets last year when we were playing against them.
Absolutely.
Obviously, Mark McCall at Saracens, I think Rob Baxter at Exeter, and I took Ali Heifer and Rob Hunter, what they've done there. Some of the French teams, Toulouse, who we played this year, were outstanding. They were in a completely different game, and they were full respect for their coaching team and how they prepared, and the list goes on. So there's those.
Yeah, and final question: what about someone with maybe working under the radar without the profile of some of those coaches who's doing great work around your area?
Say again. So like a development coach.
Yeah, someone who doesn't have that high profile and deserves a shout out.
Again, I think there's lots of talented young coaches. I was lucky in that I managed to be in the right place at the right time and gravitate from that sort of teacher to national coach, and obviously now here at Leinster. And I needed to be in the right place at the right time, but I was fortunate that people gave me as a young coach an opportunity. So. Noel McMara, who coaches Ireland 20s, he's done a good job here at Leinster, and he's done a great job at 20s.
They were good. They were good.
Winning the Grand Slam. There's loads of young coaches in England, and one of the most rewarding things now, not that I'm getting old, but is that players who I used to coach have now become coaches.
Yeah, it's great, eh?
And that's a rewarding part of the job where you're building relationships back with players you've coached and helping them become better coaches. And now that's something really I'm excited about doing in the future, and I'd love to, when I finish coaching, is help coaches become better coaches. So you can look me up in 10 years' time, however long it's going to be, and I'm more than happy to come on and talk about coaching as long as you want. So there's lots of them around the world really. But some of the guys in Leinster, some of the coaching in the Leinster school system is very strong as well. There's a reason why Leinster produce so much homegrown talent, and it's quality. It's quality of the coaching in the pathway.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, great. Well, it's been awesome chatting with you. I know you're busy right now with pre-season, so I really appreciate you giving up a little window of your day to talk. And we'll definitely be watching Leinster's progress with interest. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Okay, mate. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Perfect.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.